Doug, do you think you've shared that you've had multiple addictions?
Mm-hmm.
How would you say that a gambling addiction differs?
Great question. Gambling took more away from me quicker than any of my other addictions. It's fair to say that for the 24 years that I practiced law prior to getting suspended, that I was still a functioning lawyer despite the fact that I was unquestionably an alcoholic and unquestionably a drug addict. But the gambling addiction was so powerful and so overwhelming that it began to affect everything else in my life. It took away everything I had and eventually caused me, for inexplicable reasons, to this day, I cannot fathom why I decided it would be okay to dip into my trust account and take $5,000. That first time I took $5,000. I had it back the next day. It wasn't a problem. But that is something that literally and figuratively was anathema to my personality. I was a strictly ethical lawyer prior to that time, especially with respect to the trust account. That's the one premier sin for a lawyer. You do not invade your trust account. And this disease was so overwhelming. My midbrain was so powerful over my logical brain that it caused me to just abandon those morals and those canons of ethics and just do something which before that would have been unfathomable to me. So that's why it was so much more powerful and more dangerous. Almost took my life. I wanted to die.
You talked about the difference and that gambling took you lower than other addictions you've experienced.
Mm-hmm.
Were there times when you felt or you heard people say, because I've heard it, I've heard people say, why don't you just stop? Mm-hmm. And does that resonate for you with gambling?
It is so frustrating to hear people say something like, why don't you just stop? Duh, gee, why didn't I think of that? Here's the real issue. The real issue is that people do not know what our disease is. They do not know. Nobody would say something that freaking stupid if they knew what we were dealing with. My disease, my gambling addiction in particular, turned me into a zombie. My free will, my ethics, my morality was taken away. I was walking through life with my reptilian midbrain in control and my decision-making logical brain gone. And I've tried and tried to explain it to family members, colleagues, the bench, friends, public speaking engagements. Very few people really get it. The people who get it are either people who have had addiction in their lives closely, or some, mind you, some of the clinicians that have worked with addiction for their whole careers. I know clinicians that have worked with addiction their whole careers who still just don't get it. I mean, they can't, because it's a damn hard thing to grasp. You can't imagine yourself losing self-will and being almost enslaved by the powers of this desire to keep gambling despite the fact that everything around you is absolutely crumbling to pieces. And none of that evidence, none of the things that are happening before our minds mean anything. The only thing that means anything is get more money and go gamble. Because after all, we'll be able to solve everything. This is embarrassing to admit, but I truly believed that when I only had $5,000 left in my trust account, that I was going to be able to come back, make all that money back, fill in the trust account, and nobody'd ever know. Powerful. You can't just stop, okay?
So, Doug, what's the best thing about recovery?
It took me a while to figure out what the best thing about recovery is. But the best thing about recovery is waking up in the morning and being free, by and large, free from fear. My life in the past, my life in my addiction, was a life spent in terror of what was going to happen in the future when I was going to get caught, or when I couldn't make a bill or something like that. It was half that, and it was a half abject shame and regret for the things that I had done to people in the past. So my whole life was shame from the past, fear of the future, and when in the very few times that I was actually in the moment, I was afraid. And now, when I wake up in the morning, I smile. I have another day on planet Earth, and I have a day free from fear by and large. I'm not saying I don't get scared. During my case, I was scared I was going to go to prison, lots of things. But that fear is, I hate to say reasonable, but it's within boundaries. It's not a constant oppressive fear that I lived with in my addiction. There's a part of the combo book that really moves me. And it's on page 1, page 2 and 3, the preamble. It says, spirituality can be described as the highest and finest qualities of the human mind, such as kindness, honesty, generosity, and humility. And when I wake up every morning now, I walk out into the driveway to pick up that newspaper and come in and make some coffee for my 82-year-old father and cook him some breakfast. And I stand out there and I say, today, I'm going to exercise the highest and finest qualities of the human mind, such as kindness, honesty, generosity, and humility. And that's how I try to live my life today. I don't always get there. I'm not perfect, but I try to. And that's a great way to live.